Hello everyone, and welcome back. You wake to a pale April morning in London, the kind of soft grey light that makes the world feel quiet before it begins moving. The bedsheets beneath your hands are smooth, freshly pressed Egyptian cotton, and the room smells faintly of lavender linen water. For a moment, you simply lie there, suspended between sleep and waking, not yet remembering that today is the day everything changes. Then it returns to you, the voyage, the one spoken of for weeks in drawing rooms, at private dinners, in letters written by careful handwriting. Today you are sailing on the maiden voyage of the RMS Titanic. There is a gentle knock on the door. Your lady's maid steps inside carrying a silver tray, tea, toast, a slice of soft fruit. Her voice is quiet, respectful, practiced. Good morning. We should begin preparations soon if you are to make the boat train. Her words are calm, but there is something shared between you that is not spoken aloud. Today is important. Today, you are traveling as part of a world that watches itself, a world that understands rules of class and appearance without needing to discuss them. You rise slowly, letting your feet sink into the thick carpet. The air inside the room is warm, but you know the Atlantic will not be. A maid has already begun setting out the travelling suit you chose days ago, navy wool, precisely tailored, with matching gloves and a hat trimmed just enough to suggest taste without extravagance. Dressing is a sequence of ritual. First the chemise and drawers, then the corset, laced close enough to shape but not restrict. Petticoats, stockings, silk blouse, the travelling suit fitted over everything, like the final sentence of a well-composed letter. Each piece has been selected not simply for warmth or practicality, but for what it communicates. Clothing is language here. To travel first class is to speak it fluently. Luggage has been packed for days. Steamer trunks heavy with gowns for dinners, dresses for teas, walking suits for the deck, nightwear, wraps, shoes, gloves in sets, and hats carefully boxed so their shape does not suffer. A wardrobe for a week at sea is not a matter of convenience, but of social survival. A misjudgment in attire could be remembered long after the journey ends. Even the old servants understand this. There is no need to explain. They have done this many times before. Your automobile waits outside to take you to Waterloo Station. The city is already awake in its own way. Tram bells, carriage wheels, distant footsteps. But your departure carves out its own small stillness inside the noise. When you arrive at the platform, you are not surprised by the sight of porters rushing, journalists making notes, families exchanging careful farewells. What draws your attention are the names you overhear: the Widener family, the Astors, the Guggenheims, names spoken with a mixture of recognition and the quiet awe that comes from understanding how wealth shapes the world. You board the boat train and settle into your upholstered seat. The countryside begins to roll past the windows, green fields, stone cottages, quiet farm roads. Conversation is soft and even. The anticipation is there, but everyone carries it with the practiced composure of those who have travelled often. Still, there is a shared awareness that this voyage is special. The Titanic is the newest and largest ship ever built, a floating statement of progress, wealth, confidence, and the belief that the world is moving forward in a straight, inevitable line. When the train draws close to the Southampton docks, the carriage grows quiet. People lean forward without meaning to. And then you see it. Rising above the harbour, immense and impossibly graceful, is Titanic. The hull stretches longer than buildings you have walked past your entire life. The funnels rise like towers. The decks gleam with new paint and polished steel. The ship is still at this moment, yet looks as if it contains motion inside it, waiting. Someone near you whispers, "She is enormous." But this word feels too small. Titanic looks less like a ship and more like a promise of comfort, of power, of the world becoming something grander than before. Your luggage is tagged and sorted with practiced efficiency. Other passengers must wait in lines, pass inspections, submit paperwork. But you, travelling first class, are guided directly to your entrance. Your ticket is checked with a bow. A steward leads you up a broad gangway, and everything changes the moment your foot crosses from dock to ship. The interior does not resemble a vessel. It feels like entering a private club or the hallway of a country estate. Oak panelling, rich carpets, warm electric lighting, and polished fixtures. Each detail wants to be noticed, but not loudly. The ship has been built not to impress in a single glance, but to accumulate impression upon impression until you forget you are on the ocean at all. Your stateroom is spacious, refined, furnished with care. A bed fitted with linen, crisp enough to hold its shape. A writing desk. A small sofa, upholstered in damask. A marble basin. Even an electric heater, a luxury not yet common in every home. Your maid is already unpacking your belongings with practiced grace. There is no sense of hurry. There is simply the knowledge that everything must be put in its place. A life lived in order requires no explanation, only continuity. You step again into the hallway and follow the gentle movement of passengers toward the grand staircase. The first sight of it stills you. The curve of the carved oak balustrade, the wrought iron and glass dome above, allowing daylight to spill in as if it has been invited. The clock on the landing, framed by figures representing honor and glory, seems less like decoration and more like an assertion. Time itself answers to those who travel here. Voices float around you, laughter soft, conversation measured, languages weaving together. People move with ease, but not carelessness. These are individuals who were raised knowing how to be observed without appearing to notice. You walk onto the boat deck. The sea air is cool, almost silvery. The shoreline stretches behind you in fading shapes of docks, warehouses, and distant chimneys. The call of the ship's whistle rolls through the air deep, resonant, felt more in your chest than in your ears. The Titanic begins to move, at first so slowly that your eyes confirm the motion before your body feels it. Below, people on shore wave handkerchiefs. Some call out names. Some simply watch. From up here, they feel impossibly small. Your world has shifted. The continent behind you, the Atlantic ahead. You are now part of something vast, elegant, and full of promise. The greatest ship afloat carries you forward, and for this moment there is nothing to suggest that history could ever unfold in any direction except the one everyone expects. For now, everything is calm. Everything is graceful. Everything is exactly as it was meant to be, and the voyage has only just begun. The ship moves, almost, without being noticed at first, a gentle shift beneath your feet, as if the ocean itself has decided to make way. Conversations continue. Shoes click softly across polished floors. A child laughs somewhere behind you. There is no grand announcement, no dramatic swell of noise, only the quiet certainty that the journey has begun. The Titanic slips away from Southampton, calm and unhurried, as though it has all the time in the world. You return inside through a doorway framed in brass. The "Is it Tenjik?" and "Bienestit, is it Tenjik?" corridor is warm and softly lit. The gentle sway beneath your feet, reminding you now, but only faintly, that you are no longer on land. The air smells faintly of varnished wood and new carpet fibers, the clean scent of something recently finished and proudly presented. The ship is not old enough yet to have absorbed the stories of its passengers. It still holds the fresh quiet of something untouched. You walk through the hallway, noticing little details, the neatness of the carpets, the way each wall sconce casts a warm circle of light, the hush that makes conversation sound soft and close. Everything has been designed not to impress loudly, but to invite comfort. The ship wants you to stay, to settle, to feel that this is the world now, and the ocean is merely scenery passing by outside. A steward approaches, offering gentle guidance. His uniform is immaculate, pressed so sharply that the seams seem almost like lines drawn with careful ink. He does not rush you. Nothing aboard. This ship is hurried. He asks if you would like to be shown more of the vessel, and though you are not lost, you allow him to lead. There is a pleasure in being guided here. Every turn is a reveal. You pass through a corridor and into the heart of the ship's elegance, the grand staircase. You have seen photographs of it in newspapers and in promotional brochures, but no image could have prepared you for the way light gathers in the dome above, then spills downward, catching in the polished wood and glimmering across the gentle gold accents carved along the railing. The staircase curves like a gesture, welcoming, sweeping, almost theatrical in its beauty. It is the kind of space that makes people slow down without knowing why. Even now, passengers pause, resting their hands lightly on the banister, gazing around as though trying to quietly remember everything, to take the moment with them into memory. You descend slowly, matching the rhythm of those around you. No one wants to rush here. Time is something that moves differently aboard Titanic. It stretches. It lingers. It allows moments to unfold with grace. At the landing, you notice a plaque above the clock, carved figures representing honor and glory crowning time. The symbolism is clear, even if unspoken. To be aboard this ship is to have stepped into a world that believes in its own permanence, a world that does not doubt itself, a world that assumes it will continue as it always has. You follow the steward toward a wide corridor. To the left is the reading and writing room, airy, quiet, furnished with pale paneling and delicate fabrics. A few women sit there already, arranging stationery, preparing letters they will send upon arrival in New York. The room has a hush to it, like the first page of a novel that has not yet been written in full. Just beyond is the lounge, where a small group has gathered in comfortable chairs, some reading, some discussing the weather, some simply enjoying the soft warmth of the space. There is a fireplace here, not burning real flame, but designed to look as though it might. The illusion is enough to create comfort. To the right, the smoking room, which glows darker and richer. Mahogany walls, leather seats, a hint of cigar smoke trailing like a quiet thought. It is not loud here, not unruly, but rather measured, deliberate. The voices are low, the posture practiced. People here know they are being seen, even when pretending they do not notice. Everywhere there is detail. No room is plain. No corner has been overlooked. Even the railings are carved with careful intention. This is not a vessel built simply to cross an ocean. It is a stage for living, for being observed, for moving through life with a certain kind of grace. The steward leads you down another corridor and into the first-class dining saloon. The room is vast, far larger than any dining hall at sea you may have known before. White panelled walls rise into gentle arches. Chandeliers hang evenly spaced across the ceiling. Tables are arranged with mathematical precision, each set with silver polished to a mirror shine, crystal that catches light in its facets, and linens white as sunrise frost. Even empty, the room feels alive, as though conversation from future meals already lingers in the air. You imagine evenings here, low laughter, music drifting in from down the hall, the soft clink of cutlery and glass, a place not simply to eat, but to exist in full view of others, to play the role assigned by society, to be both yourself and a version of yourself meant for the eyes of others. Later, as you move again through the ship, you pass onto the promenade deck. The air is cooler here, carrying the salt of the sea and the faint echo of distant waves. The horizon stretches clean and endless. The ship moves with such steadiness, it feels impossible that water holds it. The sensation is not of travel, but of floating, of gliding through a wide and open dream. A man nearby remarks that the ship seems too large to touch the ocean at all, as though it rides on air. Another laughs softly and agrees. You understand what they mean. The motion is so smooth, the world so stable, that the ocean becomes more idea than presence. More passengers gather on deck, some walking, some leaning against the rail, some simply watching the shoreline diminish behind you. But the atmosphere is not sentimental. No one seems to feel loss. Only anticipation. Already, Titanic has begun to form its own world. Here, status follows you in the cut of a collar, in the slope of a hat brim, in the ease of your stance. But there is also something else, an undercurrent of quiet freedom. Time is suspended. Schedules soften. The constant demands of daily life fall away. The ship is its own universe, and everyone aboard floats inside it. As afternoon light fades into evening, the sea darkens to deep cobalt. The ship's lights come alive in warm golden rows along every deck. From a distance, Titanic must look like a moving constellation, something bright and impossible, travelling across the deep. You return to your stateroom. The bed has been turned down. Lamps cast a gentle amber glow. Your maid has laid out your evening attire. The room feels safe and quiet. The gentle hum of the ship's engines thrums like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards. You are no longer thinking of London. You are no longer thinking of where you came from. You are not thinking ahead to New York. For now, there is only this ship, this quiet, this sense of being carried forward. Titanic has closed around you like a world that feels steady, certain, and unbreakable. And no one aboard imagines that anything could be otherwise. When you return to your stateroom later in the evening, the soft light inside feels almost like a welcome held open just for you. The ship has a quiet hum beneath everything, a steady rhythm that is neither loud nor intrusive. It is simply there, like a heartbeat constant, reassuring, alive. The walls of the cabin are panelled in pale wood, designed in the style of fashionable townhouses in London or Paris. The lamps cast a warm golden glow, soft and flattering, the kind of lighting that makes faces gentle and spaces intimate. Your maid has already begun arranging your clothing in the wardrobe. Each dress, jacket, or blouse is handled with the respect given to something not just useful, but meaningful. In this world, appearance is not vanity, it is identity. How one dresses speaks before one has said a word. And on Titanic, the stage is constant, even in private. Everything has its place. The bed looks inviting, dressed in fine linen and a wool blanket folded neatly at the foot. There is a small writing desk near the porthole, with stationery embossed with the ship's name. You think, briefly, of the letters you will write here. Some will describe the voyage. Some will simply describe the feeling of being somewhere that seems cut off from the rest of life. There is something both freeing and delicate about being on the ocean. Your past is behind you, your future ahead. But neither can quite reach you yet. For now, you are suspended. You run your hand across the surface of the desk. The wood is smooth, polished by hands that took pride in their craft. Nothing aboard this ship is cheap. Even the smallest hinge, the smallest pillow, the smallest thread has been chosen with intention. Titanic was built to be not only powerful but beautiful, a demonstration of what modern invention can create when combined with the taste of old world luxury. The bathroom connected to your room is bright and tiled in patterns of white and green. The fixtures gleam. Hot water runs easily from the tap, a luxury not common in many homes. The bathtub is deep enough to immerse fully, not just bathe. If you lean your head back, you could almost imagine you are in a private bathhouse in some grand hotel. It is the kind of comfort that is not loud, not gaudy, but certain. The kind that suggests quietly, this is how life should be. But the cabin is not designed only for rest or privacy. It is a retreat, yes, but it is also your backstage space. The place where you prepare yourself for the version of you that will appear in public. When you open your wardrobe, the range of garments tells the full story of your days here before they happen. Morning walking suits in gentle neutrals, afternoon tea dresses with delicate embroidery, evening gowns of silk and chiffon, soft enough to breathe with you when you move, gloves in white, cream and dove grey, shoes polished to a small quiet shine, a world of choices, each one a sentence in the language of class. Every garment has purpose. Nothing is random. You sit for a moment at the vanity, gazing into the mirror. The ocean shifts just slightly outside the porthole, but your reflection holds steady. There is something grounding about it. The world may move, but you remain. Your maid brushes your hair, smoothing it into place with the careful rhythm of someone who does not need instruction. You do not need to speak. Silence, here, is not uncomfortable. It is understood. Outside the cabin, the ship continues its gentle motion. Footsteps move along the hallway. Voices drift past soft laughter, low conversation. The sounds of life carried lightly, as though wrapped in velvet. You are aware of other passengers, though you may not have spoken to many yet. You know their names. Names travel fast among the first-class passengers. Names carry stories. Some known, some whispered, some imagined. People here do not simply exist. They are seen. There is a comfort in being among those who understand what it means to be watched. Later, you step out onto the balcony walkway just outside your stateroom. The night air is cool, brushing gently across your face. The sea stretches out, black and endless, its surface catching small lines of moonlight. You breathe in the salt of it, the endlessness of it, the quiet that feels older than anything built by human hands. Yet the ship itself feels like a world apart from that vastness. It is warm, lit from within, steady. It feels more like a floating estate than something that must answer to the ocean. The boundary between sea and ship feels almost unreal. The Titanic does not seem to ride the water. It seems to rise above it. You lean your hands against the railing. The metal is smooth and cool to the touch. Somewhere below, water breaks into soft waves around the hull, but the sound is far away, muted by distance and design. The motion is so calm that you scarcely feel it. A couple walks past behind you, speaking quietly about dinner the following night. Someone laughs softly, as if sharing a secret. Far down the deck, a steward moves with unhurried steps, closing a shutter against the breeze. There is no sense of urgency here, no sense of danger. The world is gentle. You return to your cabin eventually, closing the door softly behind you. The room is warm, steady, waiting. You sit on the bed for a moment, your hand resting lightly on the quilt. You think of the land behind you, fading into memory now. You think of New York ahead, still weeks away in meaning, even if only days away in travel. And in the space between those two worlds, you feel something you did not expect. Stillness. Time has loosened here. Days will unfold slowly, marked not by necessity, but by rhythm. Walk the promenade. Write letters. Sip tea. Dress for dinner. Sleep to the sound of the ocean breathing beneath you. Life here moves the way a candle burns steady, even, graceful. Nothing breaks the surface. At least, not yet. For now, the Titanic holds its own universe, and you are held, gently, inside it. The next morning begins not with urgency, but with the gentle understanding that time on board moves differently than on land. There is no need to rush. The ship is vast, unhurried, confident in its own pace. You dress slowly, guided by routine rather than schedule, your hands moving through familiar motions. A light walking suit for the day, gloves, a small hat pinned neatly. There is comfort in ritual. It reminds you of who you are before you step back into the world of others. You open your cabin door and step into the corridor. The carpets soften your steps, absorbing sound so that the ship seems to move beneath you with its own quiet breath. Voices drift faintly from somewhere ahead. Soft laughter, the warm murmur of conversation shared over morning tea. You follow the corridor until it opens into the grand staircase, and once again you feel that slight pause inside your chest that comes when encountering something intentionally beautiful. The staircase is the heart of the ship, not simply because it connects decks, but because it gathers people. Light spills down from the great glass dome above, a soft, natural glow that feels more like morning sky than artificial illumination. The carved wood along the banister curves in a graceful sweep, inviting the hand to rest there, even if only for a moment. The floor beneath your feet is patterned in a design that is neither loud nor simple. It is elegant in a way that suggests someone spent time not just deciding how it should look, but how it should feel. People move through this space without hurry. There is an understanding here that to rush would be to break the quiet spell the room holds. A woman in a pale cream dress descends slowly, pausing to greet a gentleman she recognizes from another voyage. A steward holds a tray with morning notes and announcements. A young couple stands near the newel post, the woman tracing her gloved hand across the polished wood as though memorizing its surface. There is no loudness here, only presence. You begin your descent. The curve of the staircase carries you smoothly downward, so that it does not feel like simply using stairs, but like participating in a kind of choreography. The central landing draws your gaze to the clock mounted there, framed by carved figures representing honor and glory. Together they crown time, a quiet statement about how the ship sees itself. Time, here, is not something to be endured. It is something to be shaped. At the bottom of the stairs, you turn and step through a doorway leading to the lounge. The air here is warm, filtered through soft fabrics and gentle conversation. The room is large, but arranged in smaller pockets of intimacy, clusters of chairs and low tables, places where companionship can form without being forced. Some passengers read newspapers, others write letters. A few simply sit, gazing out the portholes where the horizon moves slowly, steadily, like a painting being carried across the world. If you move quietly, you will hear the subtle distinctions in voices, accents of London, Paris, Vienna, Boston. The Titanic carries not just wealth, but culture, ambition, quiet pride. People are aware of one another, though they do not stare. A glance can mean recognition. A nod can form a temporary alliance. Etiquette is not a burden here. It is a dance everyone already knows how to perform. From the lounge, you cross a corridor and step into the reading and writing room. The atmosphere here is quieter still, filtered through a tenderness of light that makes the room feel almost like a sanctuary. Women sit at small desks, pens in hand, writing letters to mothers, daughters, friends who wait beyond the ocean. The sound of pen on paper is a soft, steady whisper. The air smells faintly of ink and pressed linen. There is something deeply peaceful about this space, as though the world has narrowed to only thought and memory. You continue on, making your way toward the smoking room, where the tone shifts. The wood here is darker, the furniture heavier, the air filled with the subtle trace of tobacco. Men gather in small circles, discussing business, recent travel, or the news of the world. Voices remain quiet, thoughtful, punctuated by the occasional low laugh. Cards sit on felt-covered tables, and the sound of shuffling blends easily with the ship's steady heartbeat. There is no tension here. No one raises their voice. This is a room where time stretches, where a man may sit for an hour with a drink untouched, simply thinking. The ship accommodates such moments. It welcomes them. Later, you walk toward the promenade deck. The morning air is cool and bright, with the ocean stretching open and limitless in every direction. The horizon is clean, unbroken. The sea carries the ship gently, its movement so calm that the boundary between water and sky seems to blur into a single quiet expanse. Passengers walk slowly along the deck, some alone, some in pairs. The sound of conversation rises and falls with the wind, soft and easy. A steward passes with a tray of tea. A child holds a small ball, tossing it against the rail and catching it with both hands. The ship's funnel towers above, a reminder of the immense power that moves you forward, though no one speaks of it. Power is assumed here. It needs no explanation. As you continue walking, you realize something subtle. The Titanic feels less like a ship and more like a floating world. A world where each room has a purpose, not simply for function, but for experience. A place where every step can be taken without haste. A place where the outside world feels distant, softened by sea air and warm lamplight. You stop at the railing, resting your hand lightly on the polished metal. The ocean is vast, but the ship is steady. It moves with such confidence that it is easy to forget where you are. You breathe in, feeling the salt in the air settle on your skin. Someone passes behind you and offers a polite greeting. You return it without turning. It is enough to acknowledge. There is no pressure for more. This is the rhythm of life aboard Titanic. quiet, measured, graceful. You walk back inside through the grand staircase once more. Light pours down from above. The wood glows warmly. The ship feels alive in its own way, breathing, not in gasps, but in slow, controlled inhalations. You understand, suddenly, without having thought it before. This ship was built not simply to carry passengers. It was built to hold a world. And in this world, everything feels unshakable. Everything feels enduring. Everything feels safe. It is an illusion so gentle and complete that no one, in these halls, stops to question it. Evening arrives gradually at sea. There is no sudden fade of daylight, only a long, gentle slipping of the sky into shades of rose and soft blue. The corridors aboard the ship seem to grow warmer as lamps are lit one by one, casting a honey-coloured glow that touches the walls and moves with the sway of the ocean. It is the hour when passengers begin to prepare for dinner, the most anticipated ritual of the day. Returning to your stateroom, you find your maid has laid out your evening attire. The fabrics shimmer faintly in the low-light silk, satin, or perhaps velvet, depending on your taste and season. Dressing is not simply changing clothes. It is entering a role. Your maid fastens a row of small buttons along your back, each one closing with the quiet click of care. Accessories are chosen precisely, a brooch that catches light but does not demand attention, gloves pressed and folded, shoes polished to a gentle shine, and jewelry selected not to shout but to whisper refinement. The ship does not tell you that you must dress this way. The understanding is older than the voyage, older than you. Dinner in first class is a performance that everyone has rehearsed without being taught. It is a language spoken with fabric, posture, and the small choices that tell others how you understand yourself. When you step back into the corridor, the atmosphere has shifted. Voices are softer, movements more graceful. The ship itself seems to acknowledge the hour. You walk toward the grand staircase, where others gather in similar attire, silk, black wool, pearls, pressed collars, the pleasant hush of perfume carried lightly through the air. There is a shared awareness that this is the moment each day turns around. Descending the staircase feels almost ceremonial. The warm light above softens every face. No one speaks too loudly here. No one rushes. The staircase demands presence, not because it is grand, though it is, but because to pass through it is to be seen, and everyone in first class understands the art of being seen. At the bottom of the stairs, stewards wait in quiet readiness. They do not announce or instruct. They guide. The dining saloon opens before you in bright, welcoming space. The room is vast rows of tables draped in crisp white linen, polished crystal glasses that catch and bend the light, silverware arranged precisely, the soft gleam of porcelain plates waiting to be filled. The chandeliers overhead cast a warm, even radiance that touches every surface gently. You are shown to your table. Seating here is not random. It is arranged based on introductions, reputations, family histories, and subtle social alignments. You sit among those you are expected to understand without being told. Conversation begins easily, not forced. People at ease with formality are never uncomfortable inside it. A steward approaches to present the evening's selections. The menu is long, not overwhelming, but deliberate. The dishes are chosen to offer not simply nourishment, but elegance. Soups with delicate seasonings. Fresh fish prepared with quiet skill. Roasted meats, carved so thin the slices fall softly. Salads, crisp and lightly dressed. wines chosen to accompany each moment without overpowering it. The first course arrives, placed gently before each person. No clatter, no hurry. Every gesture has weight, but never strain. Forks are lifted with ease. Gloves for women are removed only after being seated, folded beside the plate without calling attention. Napkins unfolded and placed across the lap with silent familiarity. If a conversation pauses, it does so gracefully. There is no emptiness in the quiet here. People speak of travel, of theatres in London, of new exhibitions in Paris, of gardens being prepared for spring. The topics are chosen with care, not because anything is forbidden, but because everyone here understands the difference between conversation and noise. Voices stay soft, so the room remains filled not with sound, but with tone. The second course arrives, and then the third. Wine glasses are refilled, not by request, but by awareness. Stewards move among tables almost invisibly, stepping lightly, watching without staring. They know every preference without being told twice. Service here is not performance, it is fluency. You become aware, somewhere during the meal, of how the room breathes. Hundreds of people, each in their own small circle of conversation, yet all moving in a collective rhythm, lift the fork, speak a sentence, pause, sip, listen. No one conducts this pattern, yet everyone follows it. It is not control. It is culture, a code written into posture and gesture far before anyone here was born. At one table, a young woman laughs softly into her hand, her shoulders tilting just slightly in a gesture that is both modest and intentional. At another, a gentleman taps one finger lightly along the rim of his glass as he listens. Small signs, quiet fluencies. The dining room is not loud because it does not need to be. Presence is enough. Between courses, you glance toward the room's far end, where musicians quietly tune their instruments. Soft notes begin to drift across the tables, nothing grand, nothing meant to seize attention. Music here is air, not spectacle. It allows the room to remain gentle, warm, unhurried. Dessert comes near the end, often something cool and sweet, custard, fruit, a delicate pastry. By now, time has loosened entirely. No one checks a watch. No one thinks of the hour. The world outside the ship could be daylight or darkness or something else entirely. It does not matter. The dining saloon is complete in itself. When the final course finishes, there is no sudden movement to leave. People rise gradually, conversations unfolding into new shapes. Some walk toward the lounge for liqueurs and coffee. Others move to the promenade deck to breathe the cool night air. Some linger just a little longer, hands resting lightly on chairbacks, as though reluctant to let the evening end. You stand, smoothing your gloves before slipping them back on. There is no need to say much. A nod, a small, polite farewell. A promise of conversation continued tomorrow. Not everything must be finished at once. Stepping toward the foyer, the sounds of the dining saloon fade behind you. The grand staircase glows once more in warm lamplight. The ship moves under your feet with its soft, steady pulse. You place your hand on the banister as you ascend, not to steady yourself, but because the gesture feels natural. The ship feels stable, certain, whole. You do not yet think about where the ocean is or how deep the water lies. You do not think of the ship in any way except what it appears to be. A place where the world has softened into peace. A world that feels perfectly safe. a world that seems as though it could continue forever. And, for tonight, that is enough. The days aboard the ship begin to fall into a quiet rhythm, not dictated by clocks or deadlines, but by the natural pacing of life at sea. Morning light slips across the promenade deck, and the ocean stretches out in all directions, calm and endless. The horizon does not change, yet somehow it never feels the same twice. Sea, air softens thoughts, voices lower, time seems to open, making room for reflection, for conversation, for simply existing in space shared with others. In first class, social life unfolds gently, like the slow turning of a page. No one rushes to introduce themselves. People meet one another, through glances, through proximity, through circumstance. A shared railing, a nearby seat in the lounge, a casual exchange on the staircase. Friendships and acquaintances form not through effort, but through ease. You begin to recognize familiar faces. A woman with a pale blue ribbon in her hair, who always walks the promenade after breakfast. A gentleman who carries a newspaper folded under his arm, but seldom seems to read it. A young couple who sit close together in conversation, their hands nearly touching, but not quite, as though still learning the shape of one another's presence. There is a comfort in being surrounded by people who understand the same unspoken rules. No one interrupts. No one demands. Conversation is offered softly, like an invitation laid on a table rather than pressed into your hand. One afternoon, you find yourself in the lounge, seated near a window where sunlight pools like warm gold across the carpet. Someone nearby begins speaking about the opera in Paris, how a new soprano has taken the stage, how her voice fills the theatre like light rising through stained glass. The conversation moves from music to art, from art to travel, from travel to the quiet question of whether beauty is something created or discovered. No one tries to be profound, yet meaning comes anyway. People here speak about the world not in terms of possession, but familiarity. Cities are not admired from a distance. They are remembered, lived, known. Someone recalls a winter in Vienna. Another remembers summer evenings by the Seine. Another speaks of mornings in New York when the city wakes in a hush before footsteps fill the streets. Listening feels like traveling without moving. You add your own memory to the conversation. A small one, quiet, simply offered. It lands gently. Others nod. There is no competition here, only presence. Later, on the promenade deck, the wind brushes your face with the cool breath of the sea. The ship moves beneath you with steady confidence. Couples walk slowly, their steps aligned without needing to match. A man reads a book, one finger holding his place when he looks up to watch the waves. A steward passes carrying blankets to place across laps for warmth. Even the ocean seems to speak more softly here. Someone beside you remarks that the sea has moods. Today it is thoughtful. Tomorrow it may be playful, then serious. The ocean is alive, but not unpredictable, not now. At least, there is a shared confidence aboard Titanic that the world can be known, measured, understood. Progress has made the world smaller, more reachable. Oceans are crossed, distances shortened, once impossible voyages now routine. Yet even inside that confidence, there is wonder. People lean against the rail not to display themselves, but because it feels impossible not to watch the sea. The horizon is an invitation. It asks nothing. It simply exists. You notice how gently people treat one another here. Not because everyone knows each other well, but because everyone understands the fragile dignity of silence. There is kindness in the space between words. Someone hands another a blanket. Someone steps aside to let someone pass. Someone smiles in recognition rather than greeting. These small gestures thread the atmosphere together like quiet stitching, holding fabric in place. During tea in the afternoon, the salon fills with soft conversation. Cups clink lightly against saucers. The scent of warm pastry drifts through the air. A woman discusses her garden at home, how the tulips have likely bloomed by now, how the air there smells different, how morning sunlight glows through the kitchen windows at just the right angle. The conversation is simple, but not trivial. It carries the weight of memory, of longing, of home that exists somewhere across the ocean. Others speak about the trip ahead. Some look toward New York with anticipation, imagining theatre visits, dinners, business meetings, reunions. Some look backward instead, not with regret, but with tenderness. The life behind them has not been lost, only paused, like a page marked gently before the book is set down. There are also those who do not speak much at all. You see them occasionally walking alone, standing at the rail, sitting quietly in the lounge with a hand on an untouched book. They are not lonely. They are simply thinking. The ocean invites that kind of thoughtfulness. It opens something inside a person, the way wide landscapes sometimes do. You do not need to fill the space. You only need to be present. Evening brings new rhythms. Some passengers gather in the lounge for music. The pianist plays gently, each note falling like soft rain on still water. People listen without speaking. Others walk the deck under the star-filled sky. The night ocean feels different from the day ocean, deeper, quieter, as though the world has lowered its voice. You walk there too, your steps slow, your breath visible in the cool air. The water below is dark and broad, but the ship remains steady, warm, lit from within like a lantern moving across the sea. You feel yourself part of something larger than the moment, not defined by it, but carried by it. Someone next to you says, in a voice nearly as quiet as the wind, "It feels like the world has paused." You nod, because it is true. Life aboard Titanic is not loud. It does not rush. It does not strain. It breathes. The social world here is not about display, despite the elegance surrounding you. It is about recognition, a sense that everyone aboard shares the same suspended moment between past and future, a moment in which the world feels gentle, safe, continuous. You do not know, none of you know, how fragile that moment is. But for now, it holds, and no one feels the need to question it. Life aboard Titanic was shaped not only by elegance and conversation, but by the gentle rhythm of leisure activities designed not to distract, but to deepen one's sense of presence. Unlike modern travel, where the goal is to arrive as quickly as possible, here the voyage itself was the destination, and time unfolded in slow, deliberate movements. Each day carried its own subtle pattern, a kind of quiet choreography among passengers who drifted from place to place, guided not by urgency, but curiosity. The first stop for many each morning was the promenade deck, where the sea breeze greeted you with a clarity that felt almost new. The deck stretched wide and open, leaving room not just for walking, but for thinking. Some passengers walked with purpose, 10 laps to equal a mile, counting steps in their head. Others walked slowly, savouring the feel of open horizon, the endless blue rising and falling in a serene rhythm. When the weather was calm, the sea appeared almost silver, smooth, reflective, gently breathing beneath the ship, and people walked in silence because the ocean itself spoke in its own quiet way. After the promenade, many would make their way to the gymnasium. It was not exercise in the modern sense, no loud energy, no competition, but rather a curiosity of body and movement. The gymnasium featured strange and wonderful machines, mechanical horses that mimicked the sway of real riding, electric camels with a slow, undulating rhythm, rowing machines, stationary cycles, pulley weights. The room was bright, filled with light from wide windows overlooking the sea, and there was a playfulness to the atmosphere, not one of performance, but of discovery. Passengers laughed softly at the novelty of the electric camel. They exchanged amused expressions, while a woman attempted to maintain posture atop a moving machine. There was no embarrassment here, only gentle humour, a shared understanding that everyone was trying something new simply because it was available, simply because there was time. Ladies had separate hours from the gentlemen, a custom still lingering from older expectations. Yet even here, the boundaries began to blur. You could feel it the slightest shift, the earliest hint of a world beginning to change. From the gymnasium, one might continue downward into the quiet, tiled warmth of the Turkish baths. These rooms were like stepping into another world entirely. Mosaic tiles in deep blues and moody greens. Low ceilings. Steam drifting in soft, slow swirls. The heat was not harsh but enveloping, like being wrapped in the memory of summer. There were rooms of increasing warmth. The temperate room, the hot room, the steam room, each space guiding the body gently inward towards stillness. And then the cooling room, the heart of it all, long teak lounges, arranged like resting places in an oasis, a place designed not for conversation but for simply being. People breathed more slowly in the Turkish baths. They spoke in whispers, if they spoke at all. And time there did not feel like something passing. It felt like something dissolving. The mind loosened. The muscles softened. Thoughts drifted like mist. It was not luxury for display. It was luxury for quiet restoration. Later, perhaps before lunch, passengers visited the swimming bath, a feat of engineering so unusual at sea that many entered the room in a state of awe. The water was heated salt water, still and clear, held calm by hidden baffles that countered the ship's motion. Swimming in the middle of the ocean was an experience unlike any other. It felt as though the sea itself held you gently in its arms. People laughed more easily here, not loudly, but softly, joyfully. The kind of laughter that rises not from spectacle, but from presence. It was impossible to float in warm water, deep inside a steel ship, crossing open ocean, and not feel, at least briefly, the wonder of simply being alive. Then there was the Café Parisien, a space designed to evoke the outdoor cafes of France, with wicker chairs, trellises, and soft daylight. Here, the mood was light and unhurried. This was where people lingered, not because conversation demanded it, but because no one wanted to leave. Tea was poured. Pastries were shared. The ship's string players performed gentle melodies that passed through the room like drifting sunlight. Not every conversation there was memorable, but many were meaningful. People spoke of ordinary things, gardens, weather, books, but somehow the ordinary seemed amplified by the setting. The ocean outside the window gave every word a kind of echo. In the afternoons, the ship offered small amusements, deck games, quiet card tables, reading rooms filled with sunlight. People did not seek excitement. they sought connection. And Titanic provided the perfect environment for connection to flourish. Something subtle happens when there is nowhere to hurry to, when the horizon stays the same each hour, each day, when the only thing changing is the quality of light. People open, they soften, they meet one another more gently. On land, time often moves too quickly for the heart to speak. At sea, time stretches, slows, breathes. The barriers people carry begin to loosen. You become yourself, not the version you display to the world, but the one that comes forward when the world grows quiet. Evenings often ended back on the promenade, under a sky so full of stars it felt impossible. The ship moved through darkness like a lantern through a sleeping world. The sea, black and endless, held the ship in steady rhythm, like a cradle moving to an unseen heartbeat. You walked there sometimes alone, sometimes with a companion. No one needed to speak. Footsteps on the deck, the whisper of wind, the low hum of engines, these became conversation enough. In those moments, the world felt complete, contained, safe. You could not know, none of you could know how brief that feeling would be. But that is the gift and sorrow of memory. The very moments that feel eternal are often the ones that cannot stay. Evening on the Titanic did not simply arrive. It unfolded. The ship itself seemed to inhale and exhale with the slow rhythm of twilight, as though preparing for a quiet transformation. The soft afternoon gold slowly deepened into rose-colored light, then into the quiet blue of evening. And during that shift, the entire first-class world changed with it. Daytime clothing was set aside. Conversation lowered. A sense of anticipation gathered in the hallways, like the moment just before music begins. For passengers in first class, dinner was not simply a meal. It was the centerpiece of the day, the moment when society displayed itself in full, elegant structure. Fashion, etiquette, conversation, posture, all harmonized into a quiet performance that everyone understood without needing to speak of it. Preparing for dinner was, in itself, a ritual. Ladies entered their staterooms or dressing rooms, where personal maids assisted them through an unhurried, deliberate process. Hair loosened from pins and brushed into new forms. A softer fragrance applied, not too bold, not too sweet. Evening gowns were chosen for tone, for drape, for meaning. Sometimes the choice was guided by mood, sometimes by unspoken social choreography. Jewelry was not worn merely to impress. It was worn to signal heritage, wealth, taste, identity. A string of pearls might say one thing, a sapphire brooch another. Men's preparation was equally precise, though quieter in expression, the starch of a collar, the exact fold of a pocket square, the perfect alignment of a white tie. A gentleman might say little of these things, but each knew when the detail was correct, and correctness mattered. As passengers stepped into the corridors, something remarkable happened. The ship itself seemed to glow. Electric light reflected in polished wood, moving through hallways like warm water. Soft carpet absorbed every footstep, and from each direction, people drifted toward a single point, the grand staircase. That staircase was not merely architecture. It was the stage. Smooth oak, intricate ironwork, the soft glow of the glass dome overhead. At this hour, it became a river of silk, velvet, jewels, crisp black coats, and quiet perfume. People did not descend the staircase so much as float down it, each step guided by subtle grace. The reception room outside the dining saloon was the gathering space, a place not for loud introductions, but for glimmering, pauses moments where glances carried more meaning than words. The room hummed with calm conversation, where one might stroll slowly from one group to the next, offering a greeting, a nod, a gentle exchange about books, weather, travel, gardens, family back home. The orchestra played not loudly, but as though accompanying the very act of breathing. When dinner was announced, there was no rush, just a quiet, elegant migration. The dining saloon was vast, but it did not feel overwhelming. Light reflected from silver, crystal, glass, white linens, folded with the precision of a snowfield. Rows of windows framed the darkening sea, turning the room into a lantern suspended between sky and water. The soundscape was soft, silverware, touching porcelain, murmured conversation, the light clink of glasses. Even laughter had a measured gentleness, a controlled warmth that felt perfectly suited to the space. The meal itself was a procession, not rushed, not hurried, not indulgent in a loud or careless way. Each course was presented with care, but also with humility. The food did not demand attention, it invited appreciation. A clear soup, delicate and fragrant. A fish with sauce light enough to taste the sea. Tender cuts of meat, flavors layered without overwhelming. Wine chosen not to impress, but to harmonize. Conversation flowed in patterns. Opening remarks, safe and soft. Shared observation travel, music, theatre, weather at sea. Then, slowly, if comfort grew, a deeper layer, hopes, memory, humour, stories of childhood or cities far away. And there was no hurry. Time was not something people chased. It was something they inhabited. For those seated near windows, the sea outside became part of the experience. The dark waves glimmered like silk beneath moonlight and starlight. The "Is it Tenjik?" and "Bienestit, is it Tenjik?" ship moved gently, not as motion, but as a slow reassurance. The world outside remained vast, mysterious, unknowable. But inside there was warmth, light, a sense of belonging within the temporary society formed aboard. After the final course, the room exhaled, and another quiet shift occurred. Tradition guided the next movements. Ladies left first gracefully, not abruptly gathering their gloves, shawls, small evening bags. They drifted toward the lounge or the reading room, where conversation became softer, more personal. Music, too, softened in tone, lighter pieces, gentler melodies, something like watercolor in sound. Men remained for coffee or brandy, not to withdraw, but to hold a different kind of conversation. Not louder, but more reflective, perhaps more direct. Some discussed travel routes or business prospects. Some compared books. Some sat in silence, simply appreciating the slow warmth of a well-poured glass in hand. And, eventually, the two worlds intertwined again. Some passengers would walk the promenade after dinner. The ship at night was a world entirely its own. The sea stretched in absolute darkness, endless, unbroken. The stars above were clearer than most had ever seen. Walking there did not feel like movement. It felt like floating through quiet eternity. People spoke softly on the deck, as though not to disturb the stars. Some simply stood and leaned on the railing, looking out not for anything in particular, but because the moment asked for stillness. Sometimes two people who barely spoke during the day found easy conversation there. Sometimes someone walked alone and felt perfectly full, perfectly whole. Nightlife on the Titanic was not a performance of wealth. It was a moment of human calm, a rare silence, a rare simplicity. Inside, in the lounge, lamps glowed like candlelight. Someone read with unhurried attention. Someone wrote a letter home. Someone quietly played cards, not to win, but to share the passing of time. There were no loud demands, no urgency, only the steady, contented rhythm of life, suspended gently between continents. What mattered most was not luxury itself, but the way luxury created space. Space to think, space to breathe, space to be with others without needing anything more. It was a world built on presence, and presence, at its core, is the purest form of living. Even though the Titanic felt like a world separated from the usual rhythms of the earth, the society aboard did not leave its structures behind. Hierarchy travelled with them, tucked into luggage alongside evening gloves and polished shoes. The grand salons, the promenades, the lounges, all were stages where subtle distinctions unfolded in gestures too refined for open display. What made first-class society so intricate was not its wealth alone, but the delicate choreography of how that wealth was expressed. No one needed to say who they were. It was understood in tone, in bearing, in the particular way someone paused before speaking. You could see it clearly in the first days of the voyage. There were those whose wealth was old, stretching back generations like roots sunk deep into the soil of cities, families who inherited homes, names, habits, expectations. And then there were those whose prosperity was new, earned through business, industry, railroads, trade. Both groups were wealthy, but the space between them could feel as wide as the Atlantic below. Conversation became a kind of language of belonging, a reference to a particular London tailor, a casual mention of summers spent in Newport. The way one discussed travel, not as spectacle, but as familiarity. Those who had lived inside this world knew these cues instinctively. Those who had recently entered it learned to watch carefully, to adjust, to understand. But on the Titanic, the setting softened these divisions. There was something about being at sea, the long horizon, the quiet wind that gently loosened the borders between people. The ship became a shared world, and in that shared world, people found each other in ways they might not have on land. And yet, not all boundaries dissolved. For example, one could observe the difference simply in how passengers greeted one another. Some offered warmth freely, a hand extended before words. Others measured their smiles, their nods, holding a certain reserve, not out of rudeness, but habit shaped by generations of expectation. Among the most talked about passengers were the couples whose lives were already known to newspapers and dinner tables. Their presence drew attentive curiosity, not because of spectacle, but because they carried stories with them. People did not approach them directly with questions. Rather, observation became the unspoken activity of shared spaces. A lowered voice beside a teacup, a slight lean toward a companion during a promenade walk, a pause that held more meaning than speech. This was the social world, a dance of glances, of interpretations, of subtle positioning. But for all the refinement, there was also surprising warmth. People found genuine connection, sometimes brief, sometimes lasting. On the promenade, one might fall into easy conversation about literature, gardens, distant cities. Seated at dinner, one might discover a shared memory of a concert hall or an artist long past. In the reading room, two people might reach for the same book, and find a conversation that felt effortless. There were moments when laughter bridged every difference, and there were moments of quiet tension too, not dramatic, simply present beneath the surface. For instance, the act of joining a dinner table, where one sat, whom one sat beside, who initiated invitation, and who accepted it. This was not vanity. It was structure, a way of preserving familiar order in an unfamiliar setting. Yet within that, something else happened. People revealed themselves, not in what they displayed, but in the very softness of their interactions. Some spoke with grace that felt natural. Others tried too hard to impress, revealing not confidence, but longing. Some avoided attention entirely, not from shyness, but from a desire for peace. The ocean, the boundary-less horizon, encouraged honesty. During late afternoon tea, you could sometimes glimpse this truth most clearly. The sun angled gently through tall windows. The room glowed with a kind of softened gold. People loosened their posture. Conversation slowed. Its smiles grew more sincere. Titles, fortunes, reputations, they felt quieter in that light. What mattered instead was presence. Who listened, who asked, who looked up when another entered the room. The most remarkable thing was this. No matter how careful society was about dividing itself, the sea had its own influence, one that gently reminded everyone of their shared humanity. A shared sky overhead, a shared weathered silence, a shared vulnerability to the unknown. And so, friendships formed that would not have formed on land. A young traveller might find herself speaking softly with a widowed businesswoman who had crossed the world twice over. A reserved gentleman might discover unexpected conversation with a spirited lady who had stories of deserts and carved sandstone and nights under foreign constellations. A quiet scholar might laugh for the first time in months at a passing remark made during a card game. It was not the luxury that brought people together. It was the time. Time to speak without rushing. Time to listen without distraction. Time to notice detail. To recognize something familiar in someone else's eyes. And also, time to reflect. Because the ship moved across an ocean so vast that human matters felt smaller, softer, easier to examine with care. The world at sea was not louder. It was clearer. Sometimes, at night on the promenade, one could pass a stranger and offer the faintest nod, and that nod held everything: respect, goodwill, recognition of shared existence on the same floating world. No one announced it, but everyone felt it. Society did not disappear aboard the Titanic, but in the gentle quiet of the sea, society softened. It became more human, more curious, more willing to meet the world with openness. Hierarchy remained, yet compassion found room to breathe alongside it. And that is what made the voyage remarkable, not simply the luxury of its spaces, but the way those spaces allowed people to see one another not only as titles or fortunes or names from newspapers, but as individual lives, quiet, longing, hopeful, and deeply, quietly human. Out on the open water, time begins to change its shape. Days lose their sharp edges. Hours stretch into one another, not dissolving, but softening. You begin to notice that you do not measure time in minutes or tasks, but in light, how it moves across the sea, how it warms the decks at morning and fades into a cool silver glow by nightfall. Life aboard the Titanic unfolds slowly, like a long breath held and released without urgency. In the first days of the voyage, many passengers try to hold on to their habits from land. They glance at the clock before dressing. They walk quickly down the hall, as though late for something. They sit upright at tea, posture stiff, thoughts busy. But the ocean has a different rhythm. It is patient. It does not hurry. And without realizing it, people begin to follow. You feel it first in your body. There is a gentleness to the motion of the ship, a slow, steady rise and fall that calms the muscles, that quiets any thought of haste. You find yourself breathing more deeply. You walk more slowly. You speak more quietly. Not because you are trying to, but because the space around you invites it. The world aboard does not rush you. It allows you to settle. The horizon remains constant. It does not flicker or change. It is a line drawn between water and sky, endless and clear. And because it does not change, your thoughts begin to drift without destination, like small leaves floating on the surface of a pond. You begin remembering things you had not thought of in years, not urgently, but gently, not with longing, but with acceptance. A childhood summer, a long ago conversation, a garden you walked through once in early morning. Memory opens like a door you did not realize was still unlocked. During the day, you spend time on the promenade deck, watching the sea move in slow waves. The motion feels endless, but not overwhelming. There is a peace to it, a rhythm older than ships, older than maps, older than the stories people tell about the world. The ocean does not need to be understood. It simply is. And in watching it, you feel something inside you settle, like sediment sinking gently through clear water. Some passengers write letters in the lounge, but even their writing slows. Sentences become softer. Thoughts become rounder. No one writes about urgency. They write about light, about air, about the quietness they did not expect. In the afternoons, you might find yourself sitting at a window in the reading room, a book open in your hands, though you may not read more than a page. The words become secondary to the atmosphere, the hush of pages turning, the warmth of sunlight across your knees, the faint scent of polished wood. The room is full, but silent in a way that feels companioned, not lonely. People begin to look at one another, not with evaluation, but with curiosity. You notice smaller details. The way someone holds their teacup, the way another adjusts their gloves before standing, the way someone stares out a window just a moment too long, as though searching not for land but for a thought they have not yet formed words for. At sea, the mind has space, and in that space, truth begins to rise, not loudly, not in revelation, but in the steadiness of recognition. You begin to ask yourself quieter questions. What do I want? Where am I going? Who have I been carrying in my memory without meaning to? What do I still hope for? The ship does not answer these questions, but it makes room for you to ask them. The sea, too, seems to listen. There is a particular moment each day just before evening, when the sky softens into a pale lavender and shadows lengthen across the deck. It is then that the hush deepens, that voices fall away almost entirely. People sit alone or in pairs, watching the horizon. It is as though the day itself pauses to allow everyone to feel the enormity of what surrounds them. Not fear, not awe in the dramatic sense, but awareness. You are a small, warm being in a world that is vast, and instead of that being frightening, it is freeing. The boundaries of daily life disappear. No appointments, no social demands, no noise of cities or telephones. Only sea, only sky, only breathing. Night falls slowly too. The stars appear one at a time, then in clusters, until the sky becomes a deep and endless map. No city lights interrupt them. No smoke or haze hides them. The stars feel startlingly close, as though you could reach out and touch them if you simply leaned a bit farther over the railing. The ship moves through the racing night like a quiet thought. The sound of the engines is steady, constant, like a heartbeat. On deck, you feel more connected to the world than you ever have on land. Not connected to people, though they are near, but to something greater. Something that asks for nothing from you except stillness. You walk there sometimes, hands resting lightly on the railing, your breath visible in the cool air. The water below is dark, unknowable, infinite, but you are not afraid. The ship feels solid beneath your feet. The world feels soft. In that moment, time does not move forward or backward. It simply exists, and so do you. You are not performing. You are not remembering. You are not planning. You are only being. It is a kind of peace that is rare even in a lifetime, and many aboard feel it, whether they speak of it or not. There is a quiet psychology to being at sea, a soft unwinding of the self, a gentle clearing of the mind, a loosening of the heart's guard. It does not happen all at once. It happens in the slow steps on the promenade, in the conversations that stretch into silence without discomfort, in the starlight that feels closer here than anywhere else. The ship becomes more than a vessel. It becomes a world of interior experience, one where the journey is not across an ocean, but deeper into the self, and no one aboard. Not even those who have crossed oceans, many times truly anticipates how, profoundly, the sea can reach into the mind and quiet it. But the sea has patience, and here, in this suspended moment between departure and arrival, you feel perhaps for the first time in a long time that simply being alive is enough. Night comes differently at sea. It does not fall the way it does on land, where the world darkens all at once, street lamps flicker on, and the sound of human life continues without pause. Out here, night unfolds like silk being drawn slowly across the sky. The fading of light is an event one feels rather than sees. You watch the sun soften, then lower, then dissolve into the ocean, and the world changes around you with a delicacy too quiet to describe. The ship becomes softer in tone. The corridors seem warmer, the lights deeper, the colours richer. The day's energy settles, and everything begins to move in a slower rhythm. People speak more quietly. Movements are more measured. Even laughter, when it comes, is gentler, like the flicker of candlelight instead of a torch. You find yourself on the promenade again, drawn there by something beyond intention. The air is cool, touched with the faint scent of salt and open water. Footsteps echo softly along the wooden boards. You walk, not because you are going anywhere, but because movement feels natural here, like breathing. The sea is dark now, but not empty. Moonlight gathers in long silver ribbons across the surface. You watch the wake trailing behind the ship, foaming gently before it smooths back into the vastness. It is hard to tell where the sky ends and the water begins. They mirror each other until the horizon disappears, and you feel as though the universe has opened just a little, letting you glimpse something usually hidden. The stars are clearer here than anywhere you have ever seen them. They do not twinkle. They burn, steady and quiet. The night sky above the ocean looks ancient, like something that has existed unchanged for centuries. You could look at it forever and still not reach the end of it. Some passengers gaze upward for a long time, their expressions soft, thoughtful, reflective. Others simply stand at the railing, letting the night wash over them. Inside the ship, a different kind of quiet unfolds. In the lounge, a few passengers gather around the grand piano. The pianist plays something slow, not dramatic, not showy, just notes that fall gently into the air, dissolving before they reach the edges of the room. The melody wraps itself around soft conversations and the occasional clink of glassware. The light is dim, more amber than gold, and the room feels like a pocket of warmth suspended in a world of darkness. A man sits reading a book, but never turns the page. A woman holds a teacup, but never lifts it. Someone laughs, barely above a whisper. Someone sighs quietly, not from sadness, but from the deep exhale that comes when a person finally feels still. On another deck, in the smoking room, the atmosphere is different but equally calm. Men sit in leather chairs, their posture relaxed, voices low. Cards are played, not with competitiveness, but with leisure movements slow, gestures thoughtful. A conversation may pause for minutes at a time, and no one feels the need to fill the silence. The silence is part of the room itself. There is something about nighttime on the ship that makes everyone softer, not fragile, but open. The demands of the day no longer apply. The expectations of appearance, conversation, and posture loosen, even if only by a degree. People begin to speak not from formality, but from their quieter selves. A woman might mention a memory from childhood without planning to. A man might speak of a dream he once abandoned. Someone might recall the scent of a garden, the laughter of a sibling, the feel of warm earth in spring. No one responds with advice. No one tries to impress. They simply listen. At sea, under starlight, listening becomes a form of understanding. And then there are the solitary walks. You take one yourself. The deck is nearly empty now. A few figures linger in the distance, silhouettes against the sky. You can hear the ocean more clearly, the soft, endless sweep of water against hull. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is steady, like a deep breath the world has been taking forever. Your footsteps are slow. Your thoughts are quiet. Your heart feels calm in a way that has nothing to do with circumstance. There is a moment, one that comes without warning, when you stop walking and simply stand. You place your hand lightly on the railing. The wind brushes your face. The stars burn above you like ancient fires. And suddenly the world feels enormous and intimate at once. You are small, yes, but not insignificant. You are part of something wide and deep and silent. You are held. The ship feels alive beneath you, not as a machine, but as something carrying you gently, carefully, across the world. The ocean does not feel threatening. It feels vast, eternal, almost tender. A presence rather than a force. Inside your cabin later, the quiet continues. The lamps cast a warm, golden dusk across the room. You remove your jewelry, your gloves, your shoes. You lay them gently aside. The bed is soft, the sheets cool against your skin. You rest beneath the blanket and feel the ship moving, rocking slightly, soothingly. A lullaby without music. You do not fall asleep quickly. You do not need to. You simply lie there, breathing, listening. The sea is your companion. The night is your shelter. The voyage is your pause in the story of your life. And in that velvet stillness, everything feels clear in a way that does not need words. You are here. You are present. You are whole. and the night carries you forward. There is a certain kind of calm that settles over a ship when everyone begins to believe that the world outside cannot touch them. It does not announce itself. It does not arrive all at once. It simply grows, quietly, day by day, like a soft veil of comfort laid gently over the hours. On the Titanic, that calm became the dominant atmosphere, so complete, so natural, that few ever thought to question it. It began with the ship's sheer presence. Everything about its design, its size, its balance, its stillness, on the water suggested stability. Even in open ocean, the movement beneath your feet felt less like being carried by waves and more like gliding across air. There was no abrupt shift, no unsteadiness. The ship moved with the confidence of something made to be trusted. People spoke of this sometimes, but lightly, almost casually. A remark over breakfast, a comment on the promenade, a quick, contented nod in agreement. It hardly feels as though we are at sea at all. I have never known a crossing so smooth. You could forget the ocean is even there. And it was true. The ocean felt distant, not hostile, not mysterious, simply far away. Life unfolded aboard with such effortless grace that even those who usually bore the weight of responsibility, businessmen, society, women, families with complicated expectations, began to loosen. Shoulders lowered, hands rested, breaths deepened. The ship's atmosphere had a way of teaching people how to be unhurried, unguarded, unworried. You saw it in the quiet confidence of routine. Morning tea in the lounge, where the air smelled faintly of bergamot and linen. Walks along the promenade, where shawls fluttered softly in the ocean wind. Conversations that drifted in and out of silence without urgency. And beneath all of it, a shared understanding. We are safe here. That safety was not spoken aloud. It did not need to be. It was felt deep in the nervous system, deep in the body, deep in the ways people allowed themselves to soften. On land, people carried alertness in their gestures. Here, that alertness dissolved. You noticed it, particularly in the evenings. After dinner, when the ship glowed with golden lamplight and music drifted from the lounge, there was a softness in the air that felt almost like peace made visible. People lingered without purpose, sitting, strolling, standing at the rail, simply existing. No one rushed anywhere. No one watched the clock. The voyage was not something to complete. It was something to inhabit. The ship had become, in a way, a floating sanctuary. Children laughed more freely. Couples who had not spoken gently in months found themselves speaking softly. Older travellers rested with a stillness not available to them at home. The stress of land, of duties, of expectations, of image began to loosen in everyone, though no one would have said it directly. Perhaps the sea had something to do with it, its vastness, its slow breathing, its refusal to be hurried. Perhaps the ship had something to do with it, its beauty, its balance, its quiet elegance. Perhaps it was simply the experience of being between worlds, not where you began, not yet where you were going, a suspended moment in time. All you could see it most clearly at dusk, when the sky shifted into a palette of pale lavender and fading gold. The ship felt like it was floating, not just across water, but across a border between the visible and the unseen. The horizon stretched unbroken in every direction. No land, no smoke, no shore, only the smooth curve of the world itself. Standing on deck, you felt it, the deep, quiet certainty that everything was exactly as it should be. No one spoke of danger. No one imagined disruption. No one felt the need to guard the heart or the mind. Instead, trust settled in. Trust in the vessel. Trust in the journey. Trust in the stillness of the open sea. And under that trust, something even more subtle, a sense of continuity, as though life had entered a moment that could go on indefinitely. Mornings followed nights with predictable gentleness. Conversations returned like tides. Faces became familiar, then comforting. The ship became a world, a contained, warm, steady world, drifting across the ocean, untouched by urgency, untouched by fear, untouched by anything except the slow sweep of time. Even the crew moved with quiet assurance. Their steps were steady, their gestures practiced, their voices calm. Watching them, one felt not simply cared for, but carried. It was difficult not to believe in the stability of the ship when every detail suggested mastery. Life aboard had become so seamless that it was easy to forget that the journey was temporary. It felt instead like a way of being that could last indefinitely each day, unfolding like a pearl from the shell of the one before. Stillness had become the native language of the voyage, and in that stillness, people opened to memory, to connection, to the quiet awareness of simply being alive. No one thought of endings, only of continuance, only of the soft world that had formed here, between continents, between days, between who we were and who we would be when we arrived. For now, there was only this: light on polished wood, the hush of the ocean breathing below, the warm familiarity of shared human presence, a steady sense of peace that did not need to be defended, a world that felt safe, complete, and whole, a world carrying everyone gently forward, and no one yet imagined that anything could interrupt it. And so, the voyage continued in its gentle rhythm, day folding into day like silk laid upon silk. The Titanic moved through open water with the quiet confidence of something built not simply to travel, but to carry lives in a moment of pause. There was no urgency here, no sense of distance being crossed. Instead, the ship became a world suspended between where one had come from and where one was going. People breathed more deeply. They listened more closely. They allowed themselves to exist without needing to arrive. The ocean stretched out in all directions, vast, steady, ancient, and the ship glided across it in calm, unhurried grace. In that space, untouched by noise or haste, passengers found something rare, a stillness of the heart, a chance to remember who they were beneath all the layers of expectation, a moment to simply be human in a world that so often asks us to be more than that. The ship itself seemed to understand this, holding its passengers in a cocoon of warmth and gentle light, offering not just passage, but peace. Whether walking the promenade at dawn, dining beneath golden chandeliers, or standing under the deep quiet of the night sky, there was a sense that life, at least for now, had softened, had opened, had become something calm and whole. It is in such moments that we come to know ourselves, not through noise or achievement, but through presence. And the Titanic, for a time, offered that presence in its purest form, a world drifting quietly across the sea. Thank you for being here, and for sharing this quiet journey with me. If this story brought you a sense of calm, reflection, or gentle curiosity, I hope you will stay for the next one. Wishing you peace, warmth, and a soft night ahead. Goodbye for now. We will meet again soon.